Oh, my dear ones, I never thought I'd live to see the day when my own blood would turn their backs on me. When I overheard those cruel words at our family dinner, my heart shattered like glass on a cold stone floor. I was sitting right there, in my favourite rocking chair by the fireplace, pretending to be asleep. But I heard every single word they said, every whisper, every lie. And that night, under the dim glow of my bedside lamp, I made a decision that would change everything: my will, my legacy, my family's future. Let me take you back, my dears, to that chilly November evening in our old family home in Ohio. The air smelled of roasted turkey and pumpkin pie, and the table was set for our annual Thanksgiving dinner. I want you to picture it. The long oak table my Henry, God rest his soul, carved with his own hands, covered with my best lace tablecloth. The candles flickered, casting warm shadows on the walls, and the laughter of my children and grandchildren filled the room. Or so I thought. But let me start at the beginning, so you understand why those words cut so deep, why they broke an old woman's heart, and why I had to do what I did. The warmth of Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving was always my favourite holiday. Ever since Henry and I bought this house in '62, we made it a tradition to gather everyone here, our 3 children, their spouses, and now their children too. I'd spend days cooking, polishing the silver, setting out the old china plates my mama gave me when I got married. This year, I was 82 years old, and my hands weren't as steady as they used to be. But I poured my heart into that meal, just like always. My eldest, Margaret, sat to my right with her husband, Tom. She's always been the practical one, my Maggie, with her sharp eyes and quick tongue. Then there was Robert, my middle child, across from her, with his wife, Susan, and their 2 boys, Jake and Tommy. Robert's got Henry's stubborn streak, but I always thought he had a good heart. And then there was my baby Laura, at the other end of the table, with her new fiancé, David. Laura's always been my dreamer, my artist, the one who'd sit on my lap and listen to my stories for hours. That night, they were all laughing, passing plates, telling stories about work and school. I smiled watching them, my heart full. But my body? Oh, it was tired. The years weigh heavy on these old bones, and after dessert I felt my eyelids drooping. I leaned back in my rocking chair by the fire, pulled my shawl over my shoulders and let my eyes close. I wasn't asleep, mind you, just resting, listening to the hum of their voices. And that's when it happened. That's when I heard the truth. I heard Margaret's voice first, low and sharp, like she was trying not to be overheard. "She's asleep," she whispered. "Finally, we can talk now." My heart skipped a beat, but I kept still, my hands folded in my lap. Why did they need me asleep to talk? What couldn't they say to my face? Then Robert spoke, his voice gruff. "Look, we all know why we're here. The house, the money, the land. It's all hers, and she's not getting any younger." My breath caught in my throat, but I didn't move. I couldn't. I felt like a stranger in my own home, listening to my own children plot like vultures circling a carcass. Margaret chimed in, her words dripping with something I couldn't quite name. Anger, maybe, or greed. "She's too stubborn to sell this place, Robert. You know how she is, clinging to this old house like it's some kind of shrine to Dad. But we could split the money 3 ways if she'd just let it go." Laura's voice came next, softer, hesitant. "I don't know, Maggie. It feels wrong to talk about this while she's right there. My sweet Laura." I wanted to open my eyes, to reach out and tell her it was okay, that I understood. But then David, her fiancé, spoke up, and his words froze my blood. "Laura, come on. You said yourself she's getting forgetful. She doesn't need all this land, this house. We could use that money to start our life together." I felt tears prick my eyes, but I didn't dare let them fall. My own children, my own flesh and blood, talking about me like I was already gone. Like I was nothing but a burden, a bank account to be divided. What would you have done, my dears, hearing your family talk like that? Would you have stood up, shouted, demanded answers? Or would you have stayed silent like I did, letting the pain sink deep into your bones? I didn't know what to do, but I knew one thing. I couldn't let them see I'd heard. Not yet. What I didn't know then was that this was only the beginning. That night would unravel secrets I'd buried for decades, secrets that would tear my family apart, and maybe, just maybe, bring us back together. The weight of the past. After everyone left, I couldn't sleep. Their words kept echoing in my head, like a song you can't shake. I sat in my room, staring at the walls Henry and I painted together all those years ago. This house. It's more than just wood and nails to me. It's where we raised our children, where we laughed and cried, where Henry took his last breath 10 years ago. How could they think I'd just give it up? I pulled out my old diary from the drawer by my bed. I hadn't opened it in years, but that night I needed to remember. I needed to feel close to Henry, to the life we built. The pages were filled with memories. Our first dance at the county fair, the day Margaret was born, the way Robert used to climb the oak tree in the backyard, the stories I'd tell Laura at bedtime. But there were other pages too. Pages I hadn't read in decades. Pages about the mistakes I made, the secrets I kept, even from Henry. You see, my dears, I wasn't always the saintly grandma you might think. Long ago, before Henry, there was another man. His name was James, and he was trouble wrapped in charm. I was young, foolish, and I loved him, or thought I did. We planned to run away together, but when I found out I was pregnant, James disappeared. Left me alone, with a baby I couldn't keep. I gave that child up, a little girl, to a family in another town. I never told Henry. I never told anyone. But that night, reading those pages, I wondered if my children's greed was my punishment. Had I failed them somehow? Had I held on to this house, this land, too tightly because I was trying to make up for the child I lost? I closed the diary and made a decision. If my children saw me as nothing but a paycheck, then I'd show them who I really was. I'd change my will, yes, but not out of spite. I needed to know the truth about their hearts. I needed to know if they could love me again, not for my money, but for me. But how do you test your own family? How do you uncover what's really in their souls? I didn't know yet, but I was about to find out something that would turn my world upside down. The lawyer's visit. The next morning, I called Mr. Thompson, our family lawyer for 30 years. He's a good man, always kind, with a smile like he's hiding a secret joke. I told him I wanted to change my will, but I didn't tell him everything, not yet. I wanted to see my children's faces when they heard the news. I wanted to know who they really were. Mr. Thompson sat in my living room, sipping my chamomile tea, and we went over the details. The house, the land, the savings Henry and I had tucked away. It was all worth a good deal, more than I ever let on to the kids. I told Mr. Thompson to draft a new will, one that would shake things up. I wasn't going to leave everything to my children anymore. Instead, I'd split it in a way that would force them to show their true colours. I won't bore you with the details, my dears, but let's just say I made some unusual choices. I left a portion to a local charity for children, another to the church we've attended for decades, and a small piece to someone I hadn't seen in years, someone my children didn't even know existed. Mr. Thompson looked at me like I'd lost my mind. "Eleanor," he said, "are you sure about this? Your children won't be happy." I just smiled and said, "That's the point, Mr. Thompson. I need to know if they love me or my money." He left that afternoon, promising to have the new will ready by the end of the week. But as I watched him drive away, a strange feeling settled in my chest. What if I was wrong? What if I was pushing my children away instead of bringing them closer? And then, that very evening, something happened that made me question everything I thought I knew about my family. There was a knock at the door, soft but urgent. I wasn't expecting anyone. My heart pounded as I shuffled to the door, my old knees creaking. When I opened it, I saw a face I hadn't seen in over 60 years. A face that brought back every mistake, every regret, every secret I'd buried. Who was it, you ask? Oh, my dears, that's a story that'll break your heart and mine all over again. The ghost from the past. Her name was Clara. My Clara. The daughter I gave up all those years ago. I'd never forgotten her. Not a single day. But I never thought I'd see her again. She stood there on my porch, her hands clasped tightly, her eyes searching mine. "Eleanor?" she said, her voice shaking. I'm your daughter." I felt the world tilt beneath me. I gripped the doorframe, my knees weak. How had she found me? Why now, after all these years? I invited her in, my hands trembling as I poured her tea. We sat in the living room, the same room where I'd raised my other children, and she told me her story. Clara had grown up in a good home, with parents who loved her. But she always knew she was adopted, and when her adoptive mother passed away last year, she found a letter with my name and address. She'd spent months tracking me down, unsure if she should come. "I just wanted to know you," she said, tears in her eyes. "I wanted to know why you gave me up. Oh, my dears, how do you explain a choice like that? How do you tell your own child that you were young, scared, alone, and thought giving her up was the only way to give her a better life?" I told her everything, every painful detail, and we cried together, holding hands like we were making up for all those lost years. But then she asked about my family, my other children, and I froze. How could I tell her about Margaret, Robert, and Laura? How could I tell her about the cruel words I'd overheard, the will I was about to change? That night, after Clara left, I sat alone with my thoughts. She didn't know about the will, about the money, about any of it. She just wanted me, her mother. And that's when I knew what I had to do. I had to test my children, yes. But I also had to make things right with Clara. She deserved a place in my life, in my heart, in my legacy. But how would my children react when they found out about her? Would they welcome her as a sister, or would they see her as a threat to their inheritance? I was about to find out, and it would change everything. The will reading. A week later, I called everyone back to the house. I told them Mr. Thompson had something important to share. They thought it was just a routine meeting, maybe about the house or my health. They had no idea what was coming. As Mr. Thompson read the new will, I watched their faces. I'd left 1/3 of my estate to the charity, 1/3 to the church, and the final 1/3 to Clara. I didn't tell them who she was, not yet. I just let the words sink in. Margaret's face turned red, her lips tight. "Who's Clara?" she demanded. Robert leaned forward, his fists clenched. "What is this, Mum? Some kind of joke?" Laura just stared at me, her eyes wide like she was trying to understand. I took a deep breath and told them the truth. "Clara is my daughter," I said. "Your sister. I gave her up before I met your father." The room went silent, so quiet I could hear the clock ticking on the mantel. Then Margaret exploded. "A sister? You kept this from us our whole lives, and now you're giving her our money." Robert joined in, his voice loud, accusing. "You're punishing us, aren't you? For what we said at Thanksgiving?" My heart stopped. They knew I'd heard. They'd known all along. They knew. They knew I'd heard their cruel words, and they hadn't said a thing, not an apology, not a word of regret. I felt like I was drowning, my dears, right there in my own dining room. But there was one more secret, one more twist, that even I didn't see coming, the final revelation. That night, after everyone stormed out, I found a letter slipped under my door. It was from Laura, my sweet Laura, who'd been so quiet during the will reading. She wrote that she was sorry, that she'd been wrong to go along with Margaret and Robert's talk about the money. She said she loved me, not for the house or the land, but for the stories I told her, the love I gave her. And then she wrote something that broke my heart all over again. She'd known about Clara for years. She'd found my old diary when she was a teenager, read about my secret and kept it to herself. "I didn't want to hurt you, Mama," she wrote. "I just wanted you to know I love you no matter what." I sat there crying, holding that letter like it was a lifeline. Laura had known, and she'd still loved me. Maybe there was hope for us yet. I called Mr. Thompson the next morning and changed the will again. This time I left the house to Laura, the one who'd loved me without asking for anything in return. The land went to Clara, a way to give her the home I couldn't all those years ago. The rest I split between the charity and the church, with a small portion for Margaret and Robert, enough to show I still loved them, but not enough to let them think they could hurt me again. I invited Clara to live with me, to share this house, these memories. She moved in a month later, and oh, my dears, it was like finding a piece of my heart I didn't know was missing. Margaret and Robert, they're still angry, still distant, but I pray one day they'll understand. Life's funny, isn't it? You think you know your family, your heart, your story, but sometimes it takes a betrayal to show you the truth. I learned that love isn't about money or houses or land. It's about forgiveness, about second chances, about finding the courage to make things right. I hope, my dears, that you hold your loved ones close, that you tell them you love them before it's too late. And if you ever feel betrayed like I did, remember this: your heart is stronger than you think. You can rebuild, you can forgive, and you can love again. Oh, my dear ones, you'd think my story ended there, with Clara by my side, Laura's letter in my hands, and a new will that felt like justice. But life, you see, has a way of surprising you, even when you're 82 years old and think you've seen it all. The truth I uncovered that Thanksgiving night was just the beginning, a crack in the foundation of our family that would lead to more secrets, more heartbreak, and in the end, a kind of love I never thought possible. Let me take you deeper into those days after the will reading, when my house, once filled with laughter, became a battleground of whispers and regrets. I thought I'd made peace with my choices, but the past has a way of knocking on your door when you least expect it. And my dears, what came next nearly broke me all over again. The letters in the attic. After Clara moved in, I felt lighter, like a weight I'd carried for 60 years had lifted. We'd sit on the porch each evening, sipping tea, talking about her life, her dreams, the years we'd lost. But there was still a heaviness in my heart. Margaret and Robert's anger, their silence weighed on me like a winter storm. I prayed they'd come around, but days turned to weeks, and I heard nothing. One rainy afternoon, I found myself in the attic looking for an old quilt Henry's mother had made. I don't know what drew me to that trunk in the corner, one I hadn't opened since Henry passed. Maybe it was fate. Maybe it was God's way of showing me the truth. Inside, beneath a pile of old clothes, I found a bundle of letters. Letters Henry had written to me during our courtship, letters I thought I'd lost long ago. But there was something else too. A small envelope, sealed with my name in Henry's handwriting. My heart pounded as I opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper, dated the year before he died. "Eleanor," it began, "if you're reading this, I'm gone, and there's something you need to know." Henry's letter told a story I never expected. He'd known about Clara. All those years he'd known I'd given up a child before we met. He'd found out by chance through an old friend who worked at the adoption agency, but he never told me. "I didn't want you to carry that pain alone," he wrote. "I loved you too much to make you relive it." But that wasn't all. Henry had been sending money to Clara's adoptive family, small amounts over the years, to make sure she was cared for. He'd kept it a secret, even from me, because he knew how much it hurt me to talk about her. And in his letter, he asked me to find her one day, to make things right. I sat there in the attic, tears streaming down my face, holding that letter like it was Henry himself. All those years, I thought I'd hidden my shame, my guilt, but Henry had carried it with me, quietly, lovingly. Oh, my dears, have you ever loved someone so much it hurts to breathe? That was Henry for me. But the letter held one more secret, one that would turn my world upside down again. Henry wrote about a promise he'd made, a promise to someone else in our family, someone I never suspected. And when I read those words, I knew I had to confront my children one last time. The family meeting, I called them all back to the house, my 3 children and Clara. I told them it was urgent, that there was something they needed to know. Margaret arrived first, her arms crossed, her eyes cold. Robert came next, grumbling about the drive from Cleveland. Laura was last, her face soft, her eyes searching mine for forgiveness. And Clara. She stood in the doorway, unsure if she belonged. I held up Henry's letter and told them everything, about Clara, about Henry's secret, about the money he'd sent to her adoptive family. I watched their faces as the truth sank in. Margaret's jaw tightened, Robert's eyes narrowed. But Laura started to cry. "Why didn't you tell us?" Margaret snapped. "All these years you let us think we were your only family, and now this." Robert nodded, his voice low. "You and Dad kept this from us. How are we supposed to trust you now?" I took a deep breath, my hands steady despite the pain in my chest. "I kept it from you because I was ashamed," I said. "But your father, he loved you enough to protect you from my mistakes. And he loved Clara too, even though he never met her." Then I read the last part of Henry's letter, the part that shocked even me. He'd made a promise to Margaret years ago when she was struggling with her marriage. He'd promised to leave her the house no matter what, because she'd always been the one to care for it, to keep our family traditions alive. But he never told me. And when he died, I'd assumed the house would be split equally. Margaret's eyes widened, and for the first time I saw something break in her. "He promised me," she whispered. "All this time I thought you were taking it away to punish me." I realized then that I'd misjudged her. Margaret wasn't greedy. She was hurt, feeling betrayed by a promise her father hadn't kept. But there was more to uncover, more secrets that would test us all. And it all came back to that Thanksgiving night, when I'd heard their cruel words. What I didn't know was that someone else in the room had a secret of their own, a secret that would change how I saw everything. The truth about Robert. After the meeting, Robert asked to speak to me alone. We sat under the oak tree, the same tree he used to climb as a boy, pretending to be a pirate or a knight. He was quiet for a long time, staring at the ground, and I could see the weight of something heavy on his shoulders. "Mum," he finally said, his voice breaking, "I need to tell you something. That night at Thanksgiving, I didn't mean what I said. I was angry, not at you, but at myself." He told me a story I never expected. Robert had been struggling for years, not just with money, but with guilt. He'd made bad investments, lost most of his savings, and was too proud to tell me or Susan. That night at Thanksgiving, when he talked about selling the house, it wasn't greed. It was desperation. He thought if he could convince me to sell, he could pay off his debts and save his family from ruin. "I didn't want you to know how much I'd failed," he said, tears in his eyes. "I thought if I could just get the money, I could fix everything without you ever knowing." I reached out and took his hand, my heart aching for my boy. "Robert," I said, "why didn't you tell me? I would have helped you no matter what." He shook his head, his voice barely a whisper. "I didn't want you to think less of me." That moment with Robert changed something in me. I saw him not as the man who'd betrayed me, but as my son, carrying a burden he thought he had to bear alone. I realized then that my family wasn't perfect, but they were mine, and maybe, just maybe, we could heal. But there was one more twist waiting, one more secret that would bring us all to our knees, the diary's final page. A few days later, Clara and I were going through my old diary together, sharing stories, trying to piece together the years we'd lost. We laughed, we cried, and then we turned to the final page, a page I hadn't read in years. It was a letter I'd written to myself right after I gave Clara up. Dear Eleanor, it began, if you ever find her, tell her you love her. Tell her you never stopped. And tell your children the truth, no matter how much it hurts. They deserve to know who you are. Clara looked at me, her eyes shining with tears. You kept your promise, she whispered. You found me. I hugged her tight, my heart full, but also breaking. Because there was one more truth in that diary, one I hadn't shared with anyone, not even Clara. The diary mentioned another child, a son I'd lost to miscarriage a year after Clara. I'd named him Thomas after my father, and I'd buried that pain so deep I never spoke of it. But Henry had known, and in his letter he'd mentioned Thomas too, saying he hoped I'd forgive myself one day for all I'd lost. I realised then that my children, Margaret, Robert, Laura, Clara, and even Thomas, were all part of me, part of this house, this legacy. And I'd been wrong to think I could test their love with a will. Love isn't something you measure with money or land. It's something you build day by day through forgiveness and truth. I called my children together one last time. I told them about Thomas, about the pain I'd carried, about the love Henry and I had for all of them, even Clara, even before we knew her. I told them I was sorry for keeping secrets, for judging them too harshly, for letting my own guilt cloud my heart. Margaret cried, admitting she'd been wrong to hold on to her anger. Robert promised to be honest with me from now on, to let me help him. Laura just hugged me, whispering, I love you, Mama. And Clara said she wanted to be part of our family, not to take anything from them, but to share in our love. We rewrote the will one final time, together. The house would stay in the family, a place for all of us to come home to. The land, the money, it didn't matter anymore. What mattered was that we were together, flawed but trying, broken but healing. My dears, life is messy, full of mistakes and regrets, but it's also full of second chances if you're brave enough to take them. I learned that love isn't about what you own or what you leave behind. It's about the moments you share, the truths you tell, the forgiveness you offer. I hope you hold your family close, my dears. Tell them you love them, even when it's hard. And if you ever feel lost, like I did, remember that the heart can mend if you give it time. Thank you for listening to my story, my dear ones. It's been a long journey, but I'm grateful to share it with you. Please don't forget to like this video, share it with your loved ones, and subscribe to our channel for more heart-touching grandma stories that stay with you forever.